Hi, this is 2006 WWE Hall of Famer Tony Mr. USA Atlas, and I'm getting ready to get down and do with the one and only Hannibal TB. Yeah.
So I'm here with WWE Hall of Famer Tony Atlas. Your book just arrived to me a couple days ago, so I didn't have time to finish it, but I did read the first numerous chapters, and I was shocked to learn at how poor you were growing up. So could you just get into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, you see, as most people know, and most people want say, but unfortunately, here in America, about 70-some% of black kids grow up without a father. There was a thing when I was coming up where guys would go out and they would meet a girl and they would impregnate the girl, but then they would leave her. They wouldn't stay and support the kid. My mom was a hard-working woman. Name was Beatrice James White, and my grandmother lived with us, and my grandmother and my mother, they helped raise her. My mother worked from 7 o'clock in the morning, got off at 2, went back at 3, and worked until 11. Every time I see a 7-Eleven store, I think about my mom. And she'd come home at the end of the day, and she would bring us food. And we were pretty much on our own. There was nobody around but just our grandmother. And we had to learn to fight and defend ourselves. And, you know, I was so poor, we didn't even have dishes. My mother had a choice between buying knife and fork or plates and stuff. When a plate got broke, my mother didn't have the money to replace it. If you had a pair of pants and it got a rip in it, you pull out the needle and thread, you sew it, because my mother could not buy another pair of pants for us. So we grew up very, very poor. And it wasn't just among blacks where I live. I was raised in a little town in Virginia called Lowmore. Now Lowmore had one store, and it was called the Commissary. And the Commissary was owned by the North and Western Railroad. And then you go there, you get your shoes, you get your blue jeans, we call them blue jeans, because go back in the older days, denim was not pre-washed. So when you wore them for the first time and you took them off, the dye in the blue jeans, your underclothes, your legs, everything turned blue. Now when you buy denim, they are pre-washed. But in the older days, they were not pre-washed, and you turned blue every time you wore them. So yeah, I grew up real poor, and we had to struggle for everything. If I had one meal a day, it was great. Sometimes I remember we'd go 2 to 3 days without food in the house or anything to eat. So if I saw a piece of candy or half a sandwich or food laying on the ground, I would pick it up, brush it off, blow on it, and eat it. And then we said, well, you got to eat dirt before you die anyway. That's how poor we were. We were very, very poor. But there was a lot of people in Lowmore and in Clifton Forge, pretty much. I moved to Roanoke in my teenage years. But when I got into wrestling, they asked me where I'm from. I said, I was born in Clifton Forge, raised up in Lowmore. They said, well, we don't have shows there. They said, so we're going to just tell people you're from Roanoke. So the Roanoke stuck, because that was an area where the promoters went. George Scott was the booker at that time for Jim Crockett Promotion, which was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And I got started in wrestling the same time as Ric Flair, Johnny Valentine, Paul Jones, Johnny Weaver, Klondike Bill, Abe Jacobs. So these are guys that people up north never know, because television back then, they were syndicated. So there's a lot of great wrestlers that unfortunately the world never knew, because they didn't have cable television then.
And before you got into wrestling, you were fighting almost on a daily basis.
When I was a kid in the neighborhood, like I said, most black kids didn't have a father, and most black mothers, they all work as maids. My mother was a cook. So she was always cooking somewhere. So us kids, we pretty much raised ourselves. We was out in the street. So if you out playing basketball and you got some change in your pocket, you go up for a rebound, and the other kids hear that little jinga jinga jinga. Man, you got money. Give me some money. So if you couldn't fight, they just beat you up and take your money. I remember one time I got in a fight with this guy named Roger Vi. Never forgot his name, because he was a big bully around our neighborhood. So Roger Vi jumped on me. I was probably at that time about 9 years old, and Roger was probably 13 or 14. He was a teenager. So he's always hanging around kids of all ages. You can find kids from 18 to 6 hanging out together. They're just kids that we were just out in the street. Because there was no father or nobody at home. Our mother was gone, so we were at home all by ourselves. So he beat the crap out of me. So I was at home one day. My mother came home from work on her break at around 2 o'clock. She said, "What you been doing, boy?" I said, "Nothing." She said, "Why your face look like that?" I said, "I was fighting." She said, "Did you win?" I go, "No, ma'am." She said, "You fought him?" I said, "For a little bit." "Then what'd you do?" I said, "Then I ran from him because he's bigger than me." She said, "You run away?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Come on." So I walked behind her, and she said, "Come on." So it was all my other brothers, they with me too. So kind of like when I look back on, we look like when you see a duck cross the road, because there's 9 of us, 5 boys and 4 girls, and we all follow behind our mother. My mother, now my mother weighed about 250 pounds. She was 5'8", maybe about 250, 260, big black woman. So there's pictures of her in my book. So we got to the playground where we was at. We used to play behind the church. That was the only place that we could play. So my mom said, "Which one is it?" I said, "That one over there with no shirt on, the tall one." She said, the tall one?" I go, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I tell you what, get him." Oh, "What do you mean get him, Mom? You just beat me up?" She said, "You jump him." So I ran over there, I started fighting, to kick the crap out of me again. Every walk, and she pat my back. Good, that was good. She said, "Now what I want you to do, every time you see him, I want you to fight him." I said, "What if he's not picking him?" She said, "I don't care. I want you to jump him every time you see him." So I did. One day I saw him, and I went to fight him. He said, "Oh no, Tony, you win today." So then nobody wanted to fight me no more, because I wouldn't quit. They knew if you fight me today, you got to do it tomorrow. You got to do it the next day, the next day, the next. So and my nickname was Argo, because my English not been that good. And what I wanted to say was, I will go, but I couldn't. I was like, Argo, and so people started calling me Argo, and they said I was crazy. People always thought that I was a little disturbed. They thought I was mentally challenged, because I would just fight anybody. It didn't matter how big they was or nothing. And people just got scared of me in the neighborhood. They said, "That kid crazy. Don't mess with him. He's crazy." So and they said, "What do you mean?" They said, "He fights you every day. He won't leave you alone if you fight him." So that's how my mother taught me how to protect myself. Another time she taught us how to protect ourselves. My little brother Walter got jumped on by a full-grown man. He was like in his 20s. And my mother said, "Y'all got to learn how to defend yourself. I can't defend you all the time. I can't take time off from work, come help you, kid. You got to learn how to do this yourself." She said, back in the old days, they didn't have the running water. So you have water pails and a well. So you put the bucket on, and you put, the water go down, you get the bucket, and then you bring the bucket up, and that's how you got your water. She said, "Y'all get them pails." So we got the water pails, and she said, and we went down to the creek. She said, "I want y'all get some rocks out of that creek. Don't get the big ones, just get the little one." So we got little rocks, and people said, "What, Mom? What's wrong, Mom?" And then we saw, what was his name? Bud. We call him Bud. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he was coming up the street. My mother said, "Okay, y'all rock him." So we all started throwing rocks at him. So then we started carrying water pails around with us. If you mess with us, we throw rocks at you. So we was known for rocking you. So she taught us all these different little tricks of the trick. She was a woman, but she wasn't there. And I listen more to my mom now than what I did when I was young, because she taught us how to survive. She knew how to protect herself as a woman, because back in them days, you could beat your wife. So the last time my dad beat up my mom, she told us around in July or August. I remember it was hot. She said, "You boys come here and bring me some firewood." I had a big old kitchen stove, so we started throwing wood in the stove. That stove got red as an apple. I mean, it was bright red. It looked like it was going to blow up. I said, "Mom, the stove is hot." She said, "All right, you boys get on out here. Your dad be home pretty soon." My mother used to give my dad money to go get food. He would come home and bring beans, white beans, fat back. The fat back, big old thing of fat back. Then he take the rest of the money, go buy whiskey and gamble. He liked to gamble and do something. And that's what he did with the money when he was there. So my mother came home, she was pissed off, so they got in a fight, so he beat her up. When he came back the next payday, my mother had us to put wood in the stove, and I didn't know what for. But here come my dad, as usual, drunk, fussing. Now my dad was half black and half Scottish. He was his father was, my grandfather was McDuffie. It was Scottish, so he had that same Scottish Irish fighting temper. He was a hell of a, couldn't nobody beat him. This is the first time I saw my dad get whooped. He went in the kitchen, we hear all this banging around and we crying because we said, oh, he's beating up mom again. We opened up the door. My mother grabbed him around the back of his leg, picked him up on her shoulder, set him on that hot stove and was holding him on that stove when he opened that door. He jumped up from that stove, his pants was on fire. He took off out of the door, he turned, got outside, he said, I'm gonna kill you. My mother reached in her purse and pulled out a 38. She saved money to buy her a 38, and the guy she worked for that sold her his gun to protect her, because I guess she told the white guys he worked for about what's gonna happen, and he let her have a gun. She pulled out that gun. He took off running. My mother, we hear bang, bang, bang. All of us kids go, oh shoot, mom just killed dad. My mother came back and said, boy, he's lucky that bullets don't turn corners. I was 12 years old when that happened. I didn't see him again until I was 21 in Richmond, Virginia.
And to get into how you got into wrestling, I guess you kind of had the first ever development contract from what I read in your book. I paid to train, right?
Yeah, I got paid to train. When I first started wrestling, Sandy Scott saw me at the gym. So I was getting ready for a powerlifting contest, and Sandy Scott and Klondike Bill used to hang out together. Sandy Scott was George Scott's brother, but George Scott was the booker. So he saw me in the gym, and I didn't know who he was. So my friend Alfonso Johnson knew all the wrestlers. Black Jack Mulligan was there and all them. So they said, well, what are you training for? They said for the bodybuilding contest. So I remember Sandy Scott say, well, you know, he may be strong, but you know, muscles mean no good if you don't know how to use it. They said, oh, but he wrestled for the high school. And Sandy Scott said, he's a wrestler? I said, yeah. So he got to talk to me, and he said, well, I'll be back here in about 2 weeks. He said, I'll talk to you more. So he came back to me, brought a guy called Charlie Fulton. And Charlie did a little amateur wrestling in his younger days. So me and Charlie, we wrestled on the mat. I was in judo class. I took judo too. So I wrestled Charlie Fulton and I beat him. So Sandy went back and told all the other wrestlers, hey, I just beat a pro wrestler. So in the older day, they had two choices. They would break you into the business or they break you. One or the other, depending on your personality. Lucky for me, I was a humble, nice kid during that time. So I was getting their son, Klondike Bill, to pick me up. Alfonso took me to the Starland Arena. I got in the car with Klondike Bill, and he took me to Charlotte, North Carolina. He said, this is the hotel where all the wrestlers stay at. And I said, did that cost money? He said, well, he started laughing. He said, yeah. All I had was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an apple, and $5. And the clothes on my back, and my workout clothes in a little, you ever seen them high school gym bags about this big?
Yeah.
I had my little gym bag, and that's all I had when I left home. And he started laughing. He said, no, he said, you have to pay to stay here, Tony. So he said, come on, he said, I paid for your night. So Klondike Bill paid for me to stay that night. The next morning, George and Sandy Scott came and picked me up, and they took me to the YMCA. And George Scott put me on the mat to see what I could do with other shooters. Found out I was a good shooter, what they used to call back in the older day. And they liked me. And so David Crockett, he said, well, I know you ain't got no money, kid. He said, what we're going to do, we're going to give you $150 a week. Now, all of that, you got to pay for your food, and you have to pay to stay here at the Y. At that time, to stay at the Y was like $25 a week or something. You know, it wasn't expensive. But the Y in Charlotte, they had rooms, they had a restaurant, you know, where you could go to eat, and they had a gym. So that's why I stayed at the YMCA. And then they would come down, like guys would come down to work out with me, like Ole Anderson, Larry Sharp, the owner of used to be the owner of Monster Factory. God rest his soul. I hear he passed away. Larry Sharp was there all the time. Gene Anderson, he was there all the time. Ole Anderson was there all the time. Kimber Turl came down to work out. Me, a guy they called Carl Gotch came down to stretch me every day because he was a real badass shooter, you know.
Yeah.
And they paid me $100. And the wrestler teased me. He said I was the first wrestler that was ever paid to train to be a wrestler. I was the first.
And that was because you were a physical specimen.
They never, they never saw a guy like me before. They had bodybuilders, but I was not just a bodybuilder. I did track and field. I ran the 100-yard dash in 10 flat. I used to put the shot put at 55 feet. I was on the wrestling team. I was the Virginia at 19. I was the Virginia arm wrestling champion, the Virginia weightlifting champion, the Virginia powerlifting champion, and teenage Mr. Virginia bodybuilding champion and wrestling champion.
That's amazing.
When I was 19, I held every title in individual sport in the state of Virginia when I was only 19 years old. And the guy that I beat for the Virginia State Arm Wrestling Champion in Hopewell, Virginia, went to Vegas and won the World Championship.
Right, so if you had been able to go to Vegas,
I didn't have the money, yeah.
And Klondike Bill, I've heard Tony Schiavone say he's a bit of a strange person sometimes as far as liking girls' panties and stuff. Did you ever notice any of that?
Well, I tell you the thing, yes, he was all into panties. He used to, when he have sex with a woman, he'd take a pair of panties, put them on his head. And he liked to sniff them and do all that stuff. But when I first, like I like for women to walk on me with tennis shoes. So I'm kind of weird too. We have guys that like for women to urinate on them. We had guys that like for women to spank them. We had guys that would only be with women in orgies. You know, they have a lot of orgies. So back in the olden days, if you didn't have something strange about you, you was in the wrong business. So it was almost common. That's why all the girls came to the wrestler, because she could have oral sex with one wrestler. She could have anal sex with another wrestler. She could have regular sex over here. She could come to my room and get walked on. She'd go to another room and get her toes sucked. She'd go... I mean, you know, my first orgy, George Scott said, Tony, come on, the boys want you to come and party with them. And they said, you're anti-social. But I had this thing about me that every morning at 7 o'clock, I start my first set. 7 o'clock every morning, me and Johnny Valentine, that's Greg Valentine's father. So every morning we would go and we hit that gym, and by 9 o'clock we was eating, by 10 we were done. That was just my routine. So by 12 o'clock I always had to go to bed. I said the day is over. I don't care what I'm doing. I don't care if we're doing drugs, if it's women, if we drink it. At 12 o'clock I would end that day because I had to. I was so much in love with the weights, you know. So I came in the room one time, and Don Canuta and a whole bunch of other wrestlers was all in the room, and it was like 5 or 6 wrestlers. There was 2 girls laying on the bed. Both of the girls were getting banged. The other guy was sitting around with no clothes on. They had a 12-ounce beer in one hand and they private parts in the other hand, waiting their turn. And I've never seen nothing like that before. I walked in the bathroom, the whole bathtub had beer iced down. On the table, they had all the cold cuts. They had the salami, the bologna, the ham, all type of different cheeses, grapes, and bananas. You know, they had a whole, and I said, where'd all this stuff come from? They said, the girls brought it. I said, well, who paid for this room? They said, the girls did. This is their room. That's how it was in them days. I mean, it was wide freaking open. And I think there's 2 things that stopped wrestling, all of that ended, I would say, around the 90s, because sexual harassment charges started coming out that was unfounded. And then the main reason was diseases like AIDS. We didn't have to worry about AIDS. Back in the old days, all the wrestlers carried, you get them penicillin pills. So you wash yourself off real good with alcohol, what we used to do, and then we pop a couple of them pills. Then you had to worry about, the only thing we had to worry about then was sniffness, gonorrhea, sniffness, and the claps. That was it. I mean, there was no herpes, there was no AIDS, there was nothing like, because people, the first time that I saw the change in the sex world, me and SD Joe, we had this girl, and this girl, she walked on me, they used to walk on me, and I used to go eat, and SD used to pound them, you know, he used to have sex with them. So one time I'm in the room, and the SD just got through with this girl. She said, boss man. She said, oh, you want some? I said, no, I'm going to sleep. I said, come on, boss man. Get yourself some, boss man. I said, no, I don't want none. So he just got through having sex with her. So because I would have, and then I finally, she got up, she put her clothes on, and she left. I said, SD, did you see that? No, what are you talking about, boss man? I said, SD, she didn't wash up. Then we hear, knock, 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 knock. She went to another wrestler room. She didn't clean up. So I said, see, SD, that girl nasty. I didn't want to be with that girl. She's nasty. I thought she was nasty. Because if you have sex with somebody, and then you just get up and put your clothes on, that's filthy. And that's what she did. And I was so happy that I didn't mess with her. I told her, I said, you're going to catch something, man, mess with these girls nasty. He said, oh, they do that all the time.
So it was easy to get girls in those days.
Oh yes, man. The only reason it stopped because Vince keep them away. If Vince didn't change things, it'd be going on like that today. But Vince would be in a lot of trouble because there'd be a lot of girls that would claim sexual harassment. There was a lot of girls that would claim rape. There was a lot of girls that, you know, come now it's profitable. The first time that the women started taking advantage of the wrestler, I remember this one girl, she told me she was pregnant. Well, I hate to say it, but I was cheating on my wife then. You know, I was married. So she came to me, she told me I'm pregnant. I said, oh gosh. She said, but if you give me $500, I can get it taken care of. So I said, oh, okay. You know, right? Okay. So I gave her $500. So I was telling the other wrestlers in the dressing room, I said, look, I said, I'm glad that, I'm glad young guys, I almost got in trouble. And they said, you did? I told them what happened. And they said, oh, she got you too. She was known to do that.
Oh.
She said, oh, she got you too. And they laughed. They said, she saw you coming, kid. She would tell the guys, she would only go with married wrestlers. Then she would wait for them to come back in town. She'd tell them she's married. They would give her money to take care of the problem. But she was never pregnant. Yeah, and they used to do stuff like that all the time. A lot of girls, and then the girls started rolling the wrestlers. I don't know if you know what that means. They would wait till you get drunk and fall asleep, and they go through your pockets and take your money. So they used to tell me, don't ever let them spend the night. Always kick them out. Don't let them spend the night. Because I say, why did they say a lot of guys woke up and their money was missing. So it was a good business though. I mean, it was fun. I mean, think about a kid that come from a town that had one store, going to Charlotte, North Carolina, having every woman in the world chasing you. My first week, I was the first. I was the first wrestler to make $75,000 a year his first year.
That's pretty impressive.
My first
by
year,
today's standards, because that would be probably over 100,000 by today's standards.
Yeah, and I learned not to tell the other wrestlers my money. And wrestling, we trick you too. And I found out this too, and I'm not knocking none of the boys. People always say, you guys are all friends. No. We are not friends. We are business associates. Just like SD was McDonald's, I was Burger King, Rocket Johnson was Wendy's. And if Wendy's could put Burger King out of business, they do it in a heartbeat. So the safest spot for a pro wrestler, the safest spot was in the ring. Because in the ring, you could take care of yourself. The most dangerous spot was in the car when you're riding up and down the road. The second most dangerous spot was in the dressing room. Because you get comfortable with a person, you started talking. As soon as you get through talking, that person would go and tell the promoter. I asked George Scott one time, I said, George, how you know everything about me? You don't ride with me or nothing, you're not around me that much. He said, who do you ride with? So every time he said, stay out of these car conversations. He said, if they started talking about football, get in there. They talk about weightlifting, talk about it. They talk politics, talk about it. They talk religion, talk about it. They talk wrestling, shut up. They pick you. Like how, this is, to give you an example. My first week, I was riding with Klondike Bill and Johnny Weaver. And they said, how much you make, kid? I said, I made $1,500. That's it? I go, yeah. They said, well, Rufus R. Jones, he just made $2,500. He said, he got a big old belly. He don't have your body. You know, he don't have all the titles you got and everything. He said, how many titles you got? I said, oh, I got probably about 20 titles. He said, Rufus ain't got one. You got 20. He said, they only paid you 15. Would you like to make $2,500 a week? I go, yeah. I would love to make $2,500 a week. Next morning, ring, Tony, get your ass out here. He's mad. So I go to the office. I hear you was complaining about your payday. No, sir. He said, well, what happened in the car? So I told him the same story I just told. He said, stay out of them cars conversation. He said, my phone, he said, I got a phone call this morning that said you was complaining that Rufus was making more money than you making. He said, Rufus been in this business a long time. He earned that money. He said, we paying you the money we paying you to help you to get on your feet so you could buy a car and become independent. And he said, since you don't appreciate what we're doing for you, he said, I believe what you say, he said, but I got to teach you a lesson. He sent me to Kansas City, to Dallas, and to all the territory they were making nobody just to show me how lucky I was. So I had to spend a month not making money for that one night. Now, ain't that a trick question? Would you like to make $2,500 a week? What you going to say as a young 20-year-old kid?
Yeah, but the backstabbing hasn't changed. It might not all happen.
I learned that. Don't tell the wrestlers nothing. They're not your friend. They're your business associates.
Yeah, and they're your competitors.
We friends now. I asked George Adams, I said, George, we were together. How come we like each other, get along so well now? He said, easy kid. No more ego. No more competition. I didn't know that I was in competition with everybody in that dressing room until my career was over. That's when I learned my lesson.
And your first match, I guess you weren't smartened up to business at that point.
No, what it was, they wouldn't smart you up. That's how the old school was. You would wrestle for maybe 2 months or maybe 3, depending, in a shoot. They smartened me up about 3 weeks after I got into the business. I was wrestling. It was me, Bob Breggers, against a wrestler called Art Nelson. Art Nelson had a back about that wide. I mean, he was a freaking brute. I don't know if anybody ever heard of Art Nelson. And a Puerto Rican guy they called the Blue Scorpion. And it was in Anderson, South Carolina. And I watched Bob Bob Breggers. He used to play football. He was in that plane accident with Ric Flair and the Crockett's, that plane crash that happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, where Valentine got paralyzed from the hip down. Flair broke his back, but he came back off of that plane. But anyway, I watched Breggers throw wrestlers around. I mean, he wasn't that big. He only weighed about maybe 230, and I was like 260 pounds, bench pressing 550 pounds, and I couldn't throw them guys like that. I said, how do you do it? He said, leverage. You got to get the leverage on. So finally, I got a headlock on Art Nelson. And I squeeze, and I squeeze, and I squeeze. I'm shooting. I don't know it's a work. So after the match was all over, I'm walking back to the dressing room, and Art Nelson is standing there. He had an old Army 45, and this is his exact word. He said, you gotta smart that damn nigger up, because the next time I wrestle that son of a bitch, I'm gonna shoot him if he do that to me again. He said, George, you need to smarten him up. He's too freaking strong. So George Scott came to me. He go, Tony, tomorrow we gotta show you to work. What I do wrong? I don't want to go to work. I want to wrestle. I didn't know what he meant. I thought they were gonna put me to work. You know, like cleaning the building or something, or running the concession stand. I said, I don't want to work. I want to be a wrestler. And the whole dressing room is cracking up because they knew I don't know what. So they took me down to the Starland Arena in Charlotte, and they started training, teaching me how to work. But they wouldn't smart you up. Your first match, most everybody when they got their first match, they wasn't smart to the business. Now you smart before you even have a match.
And you wrote in your book, when you walked back in the dressing room from that match, Ric Flair was back there waving his dick around or something. What was that?
The first time I met Ric Flair, he was running around showing everybody how big his dick was. I just met this guy. And he's buck naked. He used to do that all the time. He get a big boner and walk around. But all the wrestlers did. They all did. They sat around naked all the time. Andre the Giant was sitting there with his boots on, nothing but his wrestling boots, naked, fighting. Now when Andre fought, when he passed gas, it stayed around at least 30 minutes after he did it. I mean, it didn't go away. It lingered for a long time. And he would just laugh and sitting there playing cards. Me too. All the time. Girls be in the wrestler, picture this, wrestlers sitting at the table naked playing cards. Other wrestlers, another wrestler is back in the store, in the bathroom, getting a blowjob. It's common. I went to the bathroom many times, opened up the store, oh excuse me, a guy sitting there getting a blowjob. Girl. Funny thing that ever happened to me, the funniest place I ever seen a blowjob, me and SD, we was walking, and a guy named George Wells. He used to play Canadian football, George Wells. We was in Boston, and we stayed at this hotel called the Bradford, which was right next to Chinatown. So we walking to get some Chinese food, because that's the only place that was open, you know, after, we've been drinking, so now we want something to eat before we go to bed. So we see Andre he's at the window, and we see Andre, say, hey, let's go in there and sit with Andre, because here's why everybody want to sit with Andre. When Andre eat, everybody eat. When Andre drink, everybody drink. And Andre pays for it all. The guy that would pay for everything was Ric Flair. If you sat at a table with Ric Flair, you didn't have to pay. If you sat at a table with Andre the Giant, you didn't have to pay. So we're gonna go sit with Andre. The food is on the table. And we come to Andre, boss man, you come sit, eat. You know, okay, Andre, we eat. So this guy came over, he's like a power lifter or something, big something, maybe about 280, 290, just a husky somewhere. Andre, can I get your autograph? Go away. Andre, I'm a fan of you. Go away. I just want your autograph. Go away. You say something else, boom, just like that, like you swat a fly. Knocked him complete freaking out. The guy dropped. The little Chinese guy come, oh, Andre, leave him. Leave him. So anyway, we keep eating. All of a sudden, this little Chinese girl come from underneath the table. She was blowing him under the table. In a restaurant.
Well, he's eating.
Well, this is what it was. This is how Andre eating. I asked SD, I said, what is he, having a heart attack or stroke or something? SD said, I don't know. What's wrong with the Jack? I said, I don't know. So then she gets up. And this little girl, she came up out of the table. She sat beside her. She pulled a plate over. Me and SD and George Wells kind of look at each other like, dang. That's why he didn't want he tell the guy to go away. He was getting a blowjob. The guy was trying to talk to him while I'm there getting a head job. Then he didn't want the owner to see the girl because she, you know, I guess he worked there or something, you know. But yeah, right in the restaurant. I never seen anybody get a blowjob in a freaking restaurant. Because remember they used to have tablecloths on these tables back in the old days. Yeah.
Did you wrestle for the AWA at all?
Yep, I wrestled for Vern Gagne. Vern Gagne was very, very good to me. When Vince let me go the first time, Vince McMahon came to me because a lot of guys were screwing up. We was missing shows and everything. Vince came to me and said, Tony, I have to make an example out of you. I said, okay. I didn't know what he talked about. So he fired me. And right after, Rocket left. Because he tried to get Rocket to do a lot of jobs. Rocket Johnson just left. So finally, he came to me and told me that they had to allow Pet Powders. Gorilla Monsoon came to me and told me that I was fired. I said, for what? What I do? He said, well, you were missing a lot of shows. I said, sure, with everybody else. He said, yeah, but Vince felt if he fired you, then the rest of the guys would straighten up because he sent a message, if you fired Tony Atlas, you could fire anybody because I was a big big deal during that time. I didn't know it, but later on I look back on that, found out it was a very big deal. People never saw a muscle man that could fly. See, what made me different than Pusky and Superstar Billy Graham and all the other guys that had the body, I did drop kicks, head scissors, jump off the rope, leapfrog. You know, I flew what they call flange because I did aerial moves, and none of the other guys done that. It was just the strongman stuff. You know, they never left their feet. So he fired me, and Vern took me in, and Vern teamed me up. I took Greg Gagne's place against with Jumping Jim Ronzell, and Vince called me and said he got an African trip, and I asked Vern, can I go? And Vern said, yes, as long as you come back. When I flew to Toronto, I should have known it was a one-way ticket. There was no return. When I got there, Vince Jr. told me, said, well, Tony, the trip been canceled. But it was my understanding that once you accept the trip, you accept to come back here. That's what he told me. So I said, well, I need to call Vern. He said, don't worry about it. He said, it's okay with Vern. I'll wait to talk to Vern. 2006 at the Hall of Fame, I asked Vern about that. Vern said, no, nobody ever told him nothing. He said, I just left. He never hear from me again. But Vince did not want me making money for Vern, because he knew if I stayed there, I was going to make money for Vern. And he was trying to put Vern out of business.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you first meet Rocky Johnson?
The first time I met Rocky Johnson, he was in Florida. And I rode from I flew in, I caught a cab to the building, and the promoter, and then there was Eddie Graham, he said, you're going to ride with Rocky Johnson and Mark Lauren. So they took me to the hotel, and then they took me to the show the next day. Then they left me. And a guy that called Quick Draw, Rick McGraw, gave me a ride back to the hotel. So the first day I met Rocky, he screwed me. The first day.
How did you end up going from that situation, which I guess you may have been a little bitter, to being tag team with?
I was the type of person that I wasn't very smart. I didn't know he screwed me. I believe what they said. Rocky said, oh, I looked for you, brother. We couldn't find you. He always had that excuse. We couldn't find you. The second time he did it to me, when I came back from L.A., they teamed me and Rocky up. Chief Strongbow said, don't put Rocky with Tony, put SD with Tony. Let Rocky stay in the single. But said put SD. SD would look after him, because I was never that smart to what was going on in the business. I'm an old country boy. I didn't learn the business until my career was over. That's when everything dawned on me. Like when I became homeless, I always say that was the best thing that happened to me and the worst thing, because when I was homeless, it gave me a chance to reflect on everything. Otherwise, I was always known as a stupid guy, because, you know, all muscles and no brain. Even Valentine always said, he got all that muscle, he got no brain. I didn't know how to trick people. I was raised as a Christian. I didn't know how to lie. I didn't know how to screw you. So a lot of things guys would do to me, I wouldn't know. Like, I have to tell this funny story. George Scott in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I'm on a wrestle George Two-Ton Harris, they call him Bunk Harris. And Ricky Steamboat was there. So if you ever say this to Ricky Steamboat, he would fall on his knees laughing, because he always tells this story, and he tells it good. He said, Tony, I want you to go out there and wrestle Bunk Harris, and I want you to shine. But listen to Bunk, he gonna tell you what to do, but shine out there. I want you to shine now, Tony. I said, yes, sir. I want you to shine, Tony. I said, don't worry, I'm gonna shine. So we get out there, and every time I started to make a comeback, Bunk had to go, not yet, kid, not yet. So the match at them was 15 minutes. That was the average match. For 14 minutes, Bunk Harris kicked the crap out of me for 14 minutes. Because George Scott wanted to bring him back the following month with Black Jack Mulligan. He was a U.S. champion. But he wanted, I was going to put him over, of course, but he just wanted me to build myself up to fight Mulligan. So he just kicked the crap out of me. So I come back, George Scott is standing there, but I won the match. My finish back in them days was, they throw me in, I would leapfrog, drop kick, then I throw him in, and I used to do the sleeper. That was my first hold, with the sleeper. And I put the sleeper on him, and I came back, I'm all happy. George Scott said, come back here. He said, didn't I tell you to shine? I said, yeah, George. He said, but you didn't shine. I said, yes, I did. I said, I used a half a bottle of baby oil. Rick Stevo hit the floor. I didn't know what he was talking about. So I went up with the baby oil. I'm going to shine tonight. I'm going to shine tonight. Anyway, he told me to shine. I was shining. Wahoo McDaniel said, well, George, you can't get too mad at him. He was shining.
At what point were you brought into WWF at the time, I guess WWWF, as like a full-time member of the roster?
I would say about 1980, because I came in doing 79, but the way Vince Sr. would do it, he would put you on TV for at least 3 months before he put you in the house shows.
Oh, okay.
So I went there for 3 months, just did TV, and then they started putting me into house shows. And I was wrestling, and SD wasn't there then. SD was in Charlotte, working as Rufus R. Jones' cousin, but he had this West Indian accent, so it didn't work out for him, so he came back to get his job back with Vince. So Vince Sr. came to me and said, Tony, this is SD Jones. SD said, how you doing? He said, well, we thinking about bringing SD back. He said, we got you. He said, but if you don't want it here, you just let us know. I said, no, get a man a job. And that's what made me and SD friends.
I guess you wrestled Hulk Hogan when Hogan was a heel.
Yep, I wrestled Hogan, I would say at least, well, no, the first time I wrestled Hogan was he came to Georgia with Georgia Championship Wrestling. And Tommy Wildfire Rich went to Ole Anderson, who was the booker, and said, you should work a program with Hogan because he's about one of the few heels that Tony could work with. Back in the old days, the heel was always bigger than the babyface in the older days. You know, they didn't have little heels. Yeah. And they wanted me to work an angle with Hogan because he had the big muscles, he was big and everything. And Ole Anderson refused to build Hogan up. So when I went to New York, Hogan was already there when I went there. So me and Hogan, we used to wrestle match. Tell you a funny story though. I was in what was it, the Spectrum or the Captain Center, and I'm sitting there. Vince Sr. come in. Hogan is probably about 5 or 10 feet from me. He said, Tony, what do you want to do with the big dummy? Press slam him? I go, yeah, I press slam him. He said, press slam him. He walked out the door. That's why they treated Hogan.
That was Vince Sr.
That's why when Hogan came back, he told Vince Jr., when I come back, I want to get the belt the first night. Or they promised him they're going to give him the belt. He said, well, I want it the first night. And if I don't win it the first night, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going back to Minneapolis. He came into Madison Square Garden, he won the belt the first night, and the territory exploded. So he never went back to Minneapolis.
What do you think, being a black person, about the tape that came out of him and caused all that controversy of him?
Hogan don't have a racist bone nowhere in his body. The problem with the world today, and I may get in trouble for saying this, political correctness is for white people only. If blacks do not want white people to use the N-word, then they have to stop using. You can't tell one person, I could do this, but you can't do it. That to me is reverse racism. There was a time they told black people that white people could do this, white people go in this restaurant, but you can't because you black. Black people could go and check in this hotel, but you can't because you black. Now they telling black people, white people, well, black people could say this, but you can't say this. That was wrong. And I think the only reason they did it is to break him down so they could have more control over him. That's my opinion, you know. Because when Hogan went back to do Tough Enough and all that stuff, he could write his own check. I think what Hogan did, once they did that to him, now he got to crawl back. That's why they did it, because they could never control Hogan. Every commercial, every movie that Hogan did, Vince had nothing to do with it. I was watching the Super Bowl one time with Vince McMahon, and he almost busted TV because Hogan got a right guard commercial, and Vince was trying to get on there, and they didn't. He couldn't get on there. He said, I tried to get a commercial on here, but they wouldn't let me have a commercial. He wanted to advertise his show during the Super Bowl. And he was pissed off about it. And everybody said, look. So Ted DiBiase told Vince, he said, look. Vince turned and looked, and there go Hogan with a paintbrush doing a right guard commercial. He had no idea Hogan could land that commercial. When Hogan got in the Rocket movie, they sent a memo. They said they wanted a wrestler over 6 feet, over 300 pounds. They saw pictures of Hogan, Gorilla Monsoon, Andre the Giant. The only one that showed up for the rehearsal was Hogan.
Interesting.
Andre was pissed because Andre said that could have been me. Of course it would have. They would have never picked Hogan over Andre. You know, he would have got the part. That's when Andre went into the movie, did the $1 Million Man and the Princess Bride. But Hogan was the one that broke that trade. But he did it behind Vince's back. All them advertisement stuff he did, Vince didn't do that for Hogan. Hogan did it on his own. And that's why they could never really control Hogan. Like Sergeant Slaughter, he had the G.I. Joe thing. And to come back to the WWF at that time, he had to sell the rights to Vince. Now Vince got him right by the kahunas. Don't make Vince a bad man. He's just a businessman. Vince is a very good person, but he's all business. That's why people don't like him, because he's all business, nothing else.
So you would have been in WWE when Brody had a few appearances in WWE, right?
The first time I met Brody was in Texas. You know, that's the first time I met Amarillo, Texas. He was working for Door Funk. Used to run Amarillo, Texas. But I remember one night we were going to a hotel. These hotels was different than the hotels now. There was all outside hotels. There was no inside way. You know, everything was outside. There were motels and hotels. So me and SD was coming back. We just went out and got something to eat. It was coming across the street. We used to be down. They just had these little restaurants that stay open late. You know, so we went there and got something. It was a Denny's or some restaurant we went to eat at. And Bojangles, used to be Bojangles years ago. You know, so we saw this car go round and around and around and around in a circle. Go, what in the hell is that? So SD went down. He said, that's Gonzalez. So SD was a good friend with Gonzalez. SD spoke a little bit of Spanish. So he went and said to him in Spanish, Jose, what's wrong? So when he looked at him, his whole freaking face was swollen up. We saw the match. Brody just kicked the crap out of him during the match. And SD said, brother, you need to go to doctor. He said, come on, brother, move over. He said, I'll take you to the doctor. He said, you need to go to the doctor. He said, we need to get, to get the swelling down. He said, we got to go. So SD took him to the hospital. When SD brought him back from the hospital, he turned to SD. He said, one day I'm going to kill that man. Brody beat the hell out of him in New York. But Brody was known to do that. You know, he would beat up a lot of. He did that with the Japanese in Puerto Rico. Brody would beat. If you couldn't protect yourself, not just Brody, a lot of the wrestlers would do that in the older days. They would beat you up the first 10 minutes of the match, and then they would work with you. They let you know. That was just them. They took them. They wanted to get themselves over. And if you wasn't a big name like Hogan or Paul Orndorff, they wouldn't work with you. If you was an undercard guy, they'd chew you up. They wouldn't give you nothing. Nothing. The only guy that would not do that, believe it or not, was Ric Flair and Harley Race. I wrestled against Dory Funk Jr., and when I left the ring, I lost the match, but when I left the ring, people said, you almost beat him. Dory Funk Jr. would make you like $1 million for you beat him. Ric Flair, same thing. Harley Race, I wrestled Harley Race many a time, and everybody after the match they said, oh man, you almost beat him. Harley Race could have wiped up the floor with me in 2 seconds. He was the toughest man I ever met in my life. But when he took me in the ring, he made me look like $1 million.
Did you ever see Harley Race in one of his street fights?
One, a lot of them. Harley Race hit you one time and drop you. one punch 6 inches away from me. Harley Race and Street Hamster and Carl Gotch. Another rugged guy was Mad Dog Vachon. I see Mad Dog Vachon, the guy wanted to fight, taught my wrestlers, his face kept running his mouth. So he went up to Mad Dog Vachon because he wasn't very tall. He was on like 5'9", 5'8", maybe 5'10" at the most. And he said, hey, your wrestler's a bunch of, he wouldn't mess with Butcher Vachon, because Butcher was like 6'2", 6'4", about 300. He wouldn't pick on the big guy. He picked the smallest guy in the bar to pick a fight with. Mad Dog grabbed him by the shoulder, bit his nipple off of his chest, spit it in his face and said, now cocksucker, let's go. First time I went to Kansas City, Missouri, and I came out of the gate, and I had all these guys look like they with the long beards, the Bills overalls, shotgun in the one, the Confederate flag. I was scared to death. I was scared to go to my car. So I told Harley Race, he was the main event. So he was coming out of the shower, he got dressed and everything. He saw me sitting there like this. He said, kid, what you gonna do, spend the night? I said, no. He said, what are you sitting here for? I said, I'm scared, look at them guys. He said, I tell you what. He said, if anybody fuck with you, you tell them that you know Harley Race. I whooped everybody in this town. I walked to the car. I know Harley Race. I know Harley Race. I know Harley Race. That's what I did. But Harley, yeah, even now, people was always but Harley was gentle as a lamb. One time, this guy came down to train for wrestling, and Harley told him he couldn't be no wrestler. He cursed Harley out, took off running. Harley chased him down, broke both arms. Yeah, Harley was tough.
Wow. And JYD, did you have much interaction with him over the years?
I first met JYD when he was wrestling down in for Nick Goulis in Tennessee, and me and Dog always been the best friend. One of the funniest things that ever happened to me and Dog was this wrestler named Uncle Elmer. And he used to take these pills, which now we know is opium. And he gave me one, and he gave JYD one. So me, JYD, and Mike, they just call him RRS, Rotunda, Mike Rotunda. So Mike Rotunda is sitting in the back, JYD sitting in the front seat, and we're in upstate New York. We're up around Syracuse and that area. So we driving back to Utica, because we all stayed in Utica, we're upstate New York. So I told Dog, I said, wow, there's a lot of 18-wheelers out here. Dog said, what are you talking about? I said, look at all them trucks. Dog said, what trucks? I said, Brad, there's a lot of trucks out here. Dog said, pull over, pull the fuck over. So I pull over. Dog said, how many trucks did you see? I said, oh, about 5 of them. He said, Tony, it was only one. Mike Rotunda said, well, it's a good thing you didn't try to pass him. So Rotunda, we never did drugs. He drove us back to the hotel. When we got to the hotel, it kicked in on Dog. Dog couldn't walk, so he'd go to the hotel on hands and knees. And they had he tell the lady, he said, Sylvester Rilla. The lady go, who is that? She said, are you a Vic Critter? She asked me, you a Vic Critter? I go, no. Well, what about you? You a Vic Critter? He said, no. I said, well, who is Sylvester Rilla? Mike Rotunda go. And she looked over the counter, give me that Sylvester Rilla, give me the key. He couldn't walk. Then the next morning, he was out in the parking lot wrestling an Invisible Man for his ticket. Like this. There was nobody there. And then after we sobered up, we said, no matter what, don't take nothing from Uncle Elmer. Fuji would do that too. Fuji would make cookies and put LSD in it. You want a cookie, brother? You lick the cookie. You want to lick the cookie? You lick the cookie, the room starts spinning on you.
He's lucky nobody did.
You ain't like, you know we all say that? He's very lucky that he would urinate. He would take a beer, drink half of it, and urinate in it with people he didn't like. You want a beer, brother?
Wow.
Fuji was rotten, brother. Fuji would do all type of shit to you, man. You had to watch Fuji. One of the tricks he used to love doing, the guy, when you fall asleep on an airplane, he'd carry a makeup kit with him, a woman's makeup kit. He would put lipstick on you, eyeshadow in. Then he'd take a little bit of water, a drop at a time, and drop it on your crotch. Now you walking through the airport with lipstick, eyeshadow, and look like you urinated on yourself. And if you didn't go in the bathroom, you didn't know. Oh, he was good for it. A lot of guys would do that, ribs, like Ronnie Garvin. He would come up behind you at 80 miles per hour and start pushing you down the highway. Yeah. Guys was nuts, man. We were just out there. We were young people making big money, and the world was at our feet. I got stopped one time with Tommy Wildfire Rich. We had a pot of smoke, a bag of weed up on the counter. Each one of us had a 6-pack of beer. We was all stoned and drunk. The cop pulled us over, swung the door open. A big thing of smoke hit the policeman in the face coming from Columbus, Georgia back to Atlanta. Big thing of smoke hit the cop in the face. He couldn't see who's in there. Couldn't see us. Tommy stuck his head out the door. Tommy Wildfire Rich. Oh man, my kids wouldn't believe that I know you guys. Who else you got in there? Tony Atlas, Bob Armstrong. Wow, y'all got an autographed picture? Yeah. Send him an autograph, give him a picture. Let Tony drive. He's the only one in that looks sober in this car. And that was it.
Wow. And
do that today.
Yeah, they're not as forgiving. For JYD, I heard a story or actually in your book about that girls would actually pay him to have sex with.
That's right. One of JYD, Junkyard Dog, I used to wine and dine all the girls. I buy them the tennis shoes to walk on me. I take them to dinner. I buy everything for them. Take them shopping, whatever they want. Dog said, Tony, you the star. They should be paying you. So one day we needed some money because we wanted to get, I hate to say it, but we wanted to get some cocaine that night. We wanted to get some drugs. So Dog said, well, I'm about out of money. How much money you got, Tony? I said, well, I got about $150. He said, oh, that ain't enough. He said, we get us some money. So he get on the phone, we called this girl over. She came, she threw $200 on the table. She got on top of Dog, did her thing, got dressed, took a shower, and left. Dog said, here you go, kid. He said, now we can get ourselves something. He said, they should be paying you. The girl would pay Dog to be with him. I've never seen that. Any wrestler do that. He prostituted himself to the girl. He wouldn't go to bed with her for free. He said, you the star. They should be paying you. That was his belief. He would never go with a girl to bed free. She had to pay to be with him.
Wow.
Yeah, he sure did.
And you mentioned the cocaine. How common was cocaine in the...
Well, we didn't have to go and get it. It was in the dressing room. There was always some wrestler, undercard guy, that would bring the drugs into the dressing room. Fuji was known, and Don Morocco, for pot. If you want to smoke marijuana, them the guys for marijuana. Adrian Adonis used to bring the cocaine. And there's another guy, but I don't want to mention his name. He's a very good friend of mine. I don't want to get him involved in it. He owned a school. All I can say, he got a school in Brooklyn. That's all I can say about it. But he used to bring it. But they had a lot of guys that would bring it in, guys mainly from New Jersey and New York. And they would bring it into the dressing room. We never had to go out on the corner and look for it. It was always, you get to the dressing room, everything was there. You know. Steroids. We did TV in Allentown, Pennsylvania every 3 weeks. They had a doctor there that would give you any steroid you want. I mean, he carried it. You didn't know prescription, nothing. He had a big bag. Anybody want this? Just like this. Just like this. Yeah. I think that doctor got in trouble back with Hogan and them.
Yeah, in the early 90s.
Yeah, he got in trouble. But they did it right there in the dressing room. Everything was done in the dressing room.
Someone wanted me to ask you, you don't have to answer this, but what was the best steroid cycle you ever did? Because you know,
I never did nothing but Dianaballs.
Dianaballs, okay.
That's all I did. I didn't like injectables. I always took the pills because I started with, I took what they call Dianaballs, and I would take The first week I take 1 a day. The second week I take 2 a day. The third week 3 a day, and then the fourth week I take 4 a day. And I take 4 a day for 2 weeks, and then I stop.
And that was the key.
That was key. But I only took steroid once, 1 month every 6 months. Because the reason is, if you take it for 1 month, it take a month for it to be in your system. So even though you took it for 1 month, in reality, you're on for 2 months because it take a month for it to clear your system. So even after you stop taking them, 2 weeks later, it's still in your system, so you staying on the juice. So then if you're on for 2 months, you have to lay off for 6 months. Otherwise, you're gonna cause damage to your kidneys, because it's very toxic. You can cause damage to your joints and your kidney. So you're going to take it once every 6 months. So all we had, after I came off, all we had like really a 5-month layoff. But the first month of the 5 months was not really a layoff because it was still in my system. But I only took the anabols.
Okay. And what was it like becoming the first black world tag team champions in WWE?
That was the greatest honor, one of the greatest honor that was offered to, there's 3 people that was really, really honored in this business. Ron Summers becoming the first NWA world champion, and Rocket Johnson and myself becoming the tag team champion. That was an absolute honor. And I think if me and Rocket had the brain that we got now, we could have really made a success out of it. The reason it didn't become as successful as it could have had nothing to do with Vince, had nothing to do with the promotion, had nothing to do with WWF. It had something to do with me and Rocket didn't get along. So they took the title off of us.
Right, because you were still in good shape for at least a decade after that, in your prime shape.
Yeah. And we screwed that up for ourselves. A lot of times guys would screw things up for themselves, but then when you ask them about it, they try to blame Vince or they try to blame the promotion. We are the captain of our own ship. A promotion, if you keep your nose clean and do as you're told, you could go a long way in this business. But a lot of guys couldn't do that. And I was one of them guys. I hate to admit it, but I was a screw up.
How did you end up homeless?
I ended up homeless because I went through a very nasty divorce, and they tied my money up, and I trusted other people with my money, and this girl was supposed to be paying my taxes. She didn't pay my taxes. So the Internal Revenue took over half of my money, and then the divorce took the other half. Where I was, after the Brody murder in Puerto Rico, I had no place to go. That was my last stop. So Mario Savodi had a company called ICW, International Championship Wrestler, up in the state of Maine. And he ran Maine, Massachusetts, he did shows in New Jersey, and he called me and put me on a contract for $1,000 a week. He said, it's not what you used to, Tony. He said, but you can make a living. He said, very cheap up here in Maine. He said, you can live up here. So I worked with Mario for about a year, and then Vince put Mario out of business, and Mario had to fold. So I ended up, after the first year of wrestling, I ended up with nowhere to go. And I had, my money ran out. I had no trade. I never did nothing. I started wrestling when I was 20 years old, so I never did nothing but wrestle. So finally, I ended up homeless, and I didn't have no phone. I didn't know how to contact nobody. Nobody knew how to contact me. I was just out of it. I couldn't call nobody or anything. So I ended up sleeping in a place they call the Kennedy Park. And one day, this woman from Germany, she was walking home, and she saw me sleeping underneath a bench. So she come over to me. She said, why are you out here? She said, it's cold. I know that. She said, do you know it's 22 degrees out here, and tonight it's going to be 6 below zero tonight? I said, so? She said, well, you're going to freeze to death. She said, she said, if you need a place to stay, you come stay with me. I said, you just man your own business. I cursed her out. She left. She came back with her daughter. They had butcher knives. So I go, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk to you that way. They started chiseling the ice. I looked down, the whole right side of me was on the ice. What happened during the night, during the day, my body heat melt the ice. When the temperature dropped, the ice refreezes itself. So I'm frozen in ice and I didn't know it. Because I had a lot of clothes on. I had like 4 pairs of pants, like 5 shirts. That's how homeless people do. If we find clothes, we put it on. You know, where you gonna put your clothes? We wore everything. Everything we had, we wore. That's how it was with homeless. I was homeless for a year and a half. How I survived, I used to wait for McDonald's or Burger King to close, and right before they close, I run and I climb into the dumpster. You know, where they throw away the trash, and when they throw all the burgers they don't sell, they throw them away.
Okay.
So I get all them burgers, and then I jump out of the dumpster and I take and give them to other homeless people, and we ate burgers that night. One day I came out of the thing, and the guy saw me, and they put a lock on it. But lucky for me, and then lucky for me that the lady took me, so she took me to her house. Her name is Monica. She took me to her house. She took all my clothes off of me, put them in a plastic bag, set it outside, put me in the shower. When she done that, I went into shock. My body went into shock. So she called the ambulance, they took me to the hospital, they put me on the girdle and everything. I'm sitting there, and I came to, and then I hear the doctor come out, and she said, well, how is he doing? So he started asking all these questions, because they couldn't talk to me, I was unconscious. So she tried to tell them as much about me as she could. She didn't know my name, didn't know who I was. She said, he was sleeping in the park, and the doctor said, you don't know him? He said, no, she said, I don't know him. And he said, and you bring me to your house? And she said, yeah, he needed help. So then I took it up. The doctor took it, told her, and said, well, he's lucky, because if you hadn't brought him in, he wouldn't have made it through the night. He would have been dead. So you just saved that man's life. So they released me from the hospital, and I had that hospital thing on, you know, because I had no clothes. So my wife said, I brought some clothes for you so you could wear them out of here. She had a pair of jeans. They were her jeans. So I put on women's jeans and a woman blouse and a woman's coat when I left the hospital.
Wow.
And then she took me home, and I stayed with her. She said, well, you can stay here if you have no place to stay. But it took a week to get the stench out of her house. That's how bad I smell. So I cut my hair. Bugs came out.
Wow.
They ran all over her kitchen floor, bugs.
How long have you been homeless for?
For 1.5 years, 18 months.
Would that have been the first time you stopped working out?
Yeah, for 18 months, So then I started going back to the gym, working out, and I guess I was blessed. Some people call it luck, but I'm a Christian, so when something happened to me, I feel God blessed me. I'm not afraid to talk about God. This policeman, every time he saw me going to the gym, he tried to stop me. So finally he stopped me. I thought he would stop me. I would tell him, I said, look, I don't get in the dumpster no more. I said, I'm living with, he said, yeah, I know you live with that German lady now. He said, I know, he said, we know Tony. He said, do you know of Vince McMahon? And I go, yeah. This is about 1 year after, but I would say 6 months after I stopped being homeless. And I go, yeah. He said, well, he been trying to get a hold of you. He said he called the police station to look for you. And he said, I told him that I would, you know, talk to you. So he said, here's his number. I said, well, we don't have a phone. Because Monica was not rich either. He said, we don't have a phone. He said, but the police said, well, you could use my phone. So I got in the police car. He drove me to his house. I used his phone. Vince said, hey, Tony, where have you been? We've been looking for you. And I said, I'm up here in Maine. He said, yeah, I know you were with Mario. He said, but when Mario left, he said, Mario don't even know how to get a hold of you. I called Mario. Nobody know how to reach you. He said, I got this great idea. He said, only you can make it work. I said, okay. He said, you got any money? I said, no. He said, well, I was sending you some money and a ticket. So I walked in, and they said, go to costume. I go, costume? I didn't know nothing about no costume. So I went in costume, and they made me Saba Simba. So people didn't know that 6 months before Cyber December, I was homeless and I weighed 195 pounds.
So that got you back on your feet.
Yeah, but I try to help the lady that helped me. So every month I would send her $500 every week. When I got finished wrestling, I came to her and I, because she kept all my stuff and everything. I was still living there, and she said, I said, well, the wrestling is over with. I don't know what I'm going to do now. And she said, well, you know about that weightlifting. Maybe you could get a job in one of these gyms. I said, well, you have to go to school for that first. She said, well, you got enough money. I said, what money? She said, the money you sent me. I said, that's for you. She said, no, that's your money. She said, I didn't spend none of it. She didn't even spend a quarter of that money. So I went to school, became a certified personal trainer, and then I married that woman. And we've been married for 30 years.
Wow. And then you ended up having some time in WCW after that as well.
Yep, well, I went to WCW, but here's the thing about WCW. God rest his soul. I'm not trying to badmouth him. Dusty Rhodes messed me up there, because they had a lot of plans for me and Ron Summers to work against Ron Summers, and Dusty Rhodes had me to lose to everybody there. But and then when I wrestled Ron, it didn't mean nothing because everybody but the referee beat me. And I asked Bill Watts, I said, why y'all bring me in if you're going to do this to me? Bill said, I tried to do things with you, Tony. He said, but Dusty was always against it. And then later on, I found out why.
Why?
Dusty knew he knew Vince was going to buy WCW, and he knew that once Vince took over, he'd have a job with Vince. And Vince's problem is we take care of his boys. See?
Was that the first interaction you had with Dusty as a booker, or?
Oh no, I worked with Dusty many a time down in Florida when he was down in Florida. I worked with him as tag team in Charlotte. I got a picture of Dusty spotting me in the ring. Where I do my 500 pound. I've been known Dusty since 1973. So it wasn't my first time. I knew Dusty Rhodes, but I couldn't understand why Dusty did that. It was Vince telling Dusty to do it. And gave Dusty all these promises, going to take care of his boys. See, a lot of wrestlers have boys coming up in their business. So if a promoter say, I'm going to take care of your boys, So Dusty didn't do it because he didn't like me or nothing. He did it because it was better for his future and the future of his two boys. So that's why I never held it against him, But I still made off good in WCW. I started a career in Maine. I got a proclamation in the state of Maine. I'm very respected up there. I work with kids. I work with mentally challenged adults, and I'm a trainer. So I did okay. It didn't hurt me none.
What can you tell us about that night in Puerto Rico when Brody was murdered?
Well, the first thing that I can tell you is that they left Brody at the hotel, the Tanamar Hotel, and I came out the building and I saw Dusty Rhodes. I mean, not Dusty Rhodes, sorry. I saw Dutch Mantel and Brody sitting on the steps. So I said, Brody, what's going on? He said, oh, I'm waiting on Jose. He's supposed to pick me up. And I said, well, I'm going there now. If you want to, you can ride me. And my buddy from the owner of the gym, he's going to take me to the building, because I told him if he go with me, he don't have to pay to get in. So he came up. He had his wife with me. He said, do you mind if my wife go? Can you get my wife in too? I said, yeah, I'll get your wife in. So I told Brody, come on. So me and Dutch Mantel, we got in the back of the guy's car. The guy's wife slid over in the center, and Brody sat in the front seat. We got to the building. Jose got up. He walked out of the building, and I pulled out my art pad. I was drawing a picture of Mark and Jay Youngblood. And Brody said, "Oh man, I didn't know you could do that." He said, "That's good artwork." And he said, "Can you do one of my son?" And I said, "Yeah, if you got a picture." I said, "We got a week here." I said, "I can have it done before you leave." He said, "Oh, that'd be great if you could do that." He said, "Well, how much I owe you?" I said, "You don't owe me nothing, brother." And so just when he said that, Jose come up behind Brody with a towel over his hand. He said, "Brody, can I talk to you, por favor?" Which means please. Brody turned around. He still had his bag in his hand. Turned around, and stepped one foot in the shower, and then the other foot in the shower. As soon as the sucker foot hit the shower, I hear this sound. Just like that. So the second time he did it, he bent over. I looked up, and the first time he did it, I thought he got punched. I said, damn, Jose could hit hard. They fighting. So when I saw him bend over, Jose lift the knife in the air like that, and I saw the knife with the blood dripping off of it. So I jumped from my chair and grabbed Brody around the waist and yanked him back. The knife came down and cut Brody's ponytail off. That's how sharp the knife was. Carlos Colon shot by me as I was holding Brody up. Pushed Jose up against the wall. Said, "No, Jose, no, Jose." And Brody looked at me and said, "Brother, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. Don't let them hurt me anymore." He didn't say him. Don't let them hurt me anymore. So I laid him on the floor. I said, "Don't worry, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to you." So then the ambulance, after 45 minutes, the ambulance came in. The reason the ambulance was so late getting there, because it was at the beginning of the show and all the people was coming in. So the ambulance was stuck in traffic and couldn't get there. So finally, about 45 minutes to an hour, they finally showed up.
So what was everyone else in the dressing room doing?
Getting dressed.
So no one, other than you, no one was trying to...
Do nothing. Getting dressed. That's what they were doing. Getting dressed. Then
Were you the only American in the dressing room?
No. We had, I know Roberto Soto, he was there. The Youngblood was there. Dutch Mantel was there. And there was a couple more American wrestlers there. So the thing that got me about the Brody incident, the guy was an old lady, an old man. Because they didn't sing young paramedics there because nothing ever happened, you know. We get the cuts on the head and they put a band-aid on it, you know, a couple of, that's all they did was put a little stuff on the head. So it was never no serious.
They're figuring wrestling.
Right. That's just show anyway. So they didn't sing real strong people there. They didn't know how serious the incident was. So anyway, the guy, they couldn't lift Brody. Because Brody was over 300 pounds, they couldn't lift him. So they came, would somebody help? Said, we can't lift him. So everybody, they turned it back. Turned it back. So I said, I help. So I got up, I put my arm in, I squatted all the way down, got underneath Brody. Brody said, don't drop me, brother. I said, don't worry. I said, I curl more than you weigh. So he started smiling a little bit, so I pulled the thing up until it clicked. Then I pushed him on the ambulance. So then the guy said, well, if somebody want to go to the hospital with him, they can. Everybody in that dressing room, they turn around again. They turned it freaking back. So I said, I go. So I got on the back of the ambulance, and then a little bird ran up and said, Tony, what good you gonna do? You can't speak Spanish. So this one guy, they called him Hercules something, not Hayala, but so I saw him, and I was very strong there. So I grabbed by the belt with one arm, and I curled him up just like this. And I'm holding on to the ambulance, I say to pull off and hold him. We go, let me go, let me go. Once we were out the thing, he goes, oh, Tony, please let me go. He said, I don't want to get involved in this. So I said, all you gotta do is just repeat what I said. That's it. So he went with me, and every time I asked the doctor something, he told the doctor. And I told the doctor it was a stab. One doctor spoke English, he said, oh, he opened up the door. He said, Tony, a stabbing in Puerto Rico is like a cold in America. He said, no big deal. I said, this one is. So he started to walk away. So I grabbed the doctor and put him on my shoulder. I took him in to see Brody. So he said, how you doing? Brody said, well, I'm just waiting for you to help me. So the doctor lift Brody's hand up and pool of blood. He go, oh, this is serious. We need to get him in right away. So as he was calling for the nurse, I took Brody's shoes off and his feet was turning blue. I started crying. I was crying before, but I started crying again. The guy come out and say he had 2 8-inch cuts. One cut the liver, the other cut his intestine. The cut that cut his intestine, they fixed that. He said, that's fixed. He said, we're working on the liver part. He said, but your friend is stable. He's going to be okay. He said, but you have to leave because everybody's scared of you. Because I was punching huge. No, I was going nuts. I was going fucking nuts. Because after about an hour, I started hitting the wall, throwing chairs around. What the fuck is going on? I lost it.
Because they weren't taking him in?
No, they took him in.
But
the whole time I was there, from the moment of stabbing until I left, I lost it. I've never been that crazy a day in my life. And back in them days, let me see, at that time I was 307 pounds with a 650 bench. So, I mean, I was like, I had no shirt on. I was tearing up the place. And I was just so pissed off. I was just angry. I had all this anger in me. And there was nobody there to take it out on. So I started taking it out on the hospital walls and stuff. I punched holes in all the walls and everything. So I left with the other guy, called us a cab, went back to the place.
So when Brody went in the shower, he had his guard fully down?
Had no idea. He ain't even put his bag down. He had his wrestling bag. He used to carry this little pouch with his money and everything in.
Yeah.
And he was looking at me drawing. The last thing on his bag. Then he reached into his pouch to get a picture of his son. And he reached to hand the picture to me just like this. I reached to get the picture. Before I could do that, Jose said, "Can I talk to you?" Brody turned. So I never got the picture. He was still holding the picture. He walked in the shower with the pouch in one hand, the picture of his son in his other hand. And when he went into the operation room, guess what he had in his hand?
The picture of his son. Now, where was Carlos and Victor Jovica during this?
They was there.
So Carlos and Victor were in the dressing room?
When I walked into the dressing room, Carlos, Jovica, and Jose was sitting in a football huddle. When we walked through the door, Jose got up and left.
What was Carlos's reaction to the stabbing?
He was mainly worried about me, calming me down. He said, "Come on, Tony, calm down. We don't need that. We don't need that." I said, "You come over here, I'm gonna knock your motherfucking head off your shoulder." Right. Carlos said, "Well, we don't need that." I said, "Carlos, if you come over here, I'm gonna knock your head off your shoulder. I mean what I said."
So they left the dressing room while he was...
When I came back to the dressing room, the blood had not dried on the floor yet. I hear laughing and joking and everybody bragging about their match. And how the heels, because they had a babyface dressing room, the heel dressing room, how the heels found out about it. I was in the ring with the Iron Sheik. And the Sheik said, "Brother, what happened to the Brody?" You know how Sheik talk. And I said, "Jose Gonzalez stabbed him." "That motherfucking Jose Gonzalez of the Vader killed my fucking friend, stabbed my fucking friend, the Bruiser of the Brody. Fuck him. Let's go home, brother." So I gave him a headbutt. He falls out the ring, and we went back. That was the whole match. He asked me what happened. I told him. I headbutted him. He fell out the ring. We went back to the dressing room. Carlos said, "That was short." And then Sheik went back to the dressing room and told all the other boys. And then later on today, Abdullah took a call for me.
Did the police come to the dressing room at all?
Yeah. So this cop came up to me. He said, "Tony, I've been waiting on you." He said, "What hospital did you go to?" I said, "I don't know the hospital." I said, "But they say he's going to be okay." And then he said, "But did you get a look at the wrestling fan that did this?" I said, "No wrestling fan did it." He said, "Did you see it?" I said, "Yeah, I saw it." He said, "Who did it?" I said, "That motherfucker right there." He said, "You mean Vader?" I said, "Yes, him."
Oh, he was in the dressing room.
He was getting dressed.
Yeah.
Everybody was laughing and joking like nothing happened.
He wrestled that night.
He wrestled. Everybody. The show went on, brother. Nothing. Yeah. When I walked in, you wouldn't think anything happened. You would not think anything happened if you walked to that dressing room when I came back from the hospital. They was all laughing and joking, patting each other on the back, talking about how great a match they was having. There was no sadness, no nothing. It was happiness.
So the stabbing happened before the show started?
Yes.
What, 45 minutes, an hour before the show started?
Yeah, because we had to be at the show an hour before.
And then the shows are 3 hours usually, sometimes longer because the intermissions are...
Right, because I was at the hospital for at least 2 hours. Right. And I came back and they said, "Oh, Tony, we're just getting ready to cancel your match." He said, Carlos said, "Get dressed, go into the ring." So I got dressed, went into the ring. That's when I told the Iron Sheik. And then when I got back to the dressing room, the policeman came to talk to me. And I told him, I said, "He did it." And he said, "Will you come to the station tomorrow and fill out a report?" I said, "Yeah."
So did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I sure did. But that night that Brody got stabbed, I stayed on the beach all night. I couldn't sleep. That saved my life. Then I was going back to the hotel the next morning, you know.
It's a traumatic thing.
Oh, yeah, man, just a friend of mine, brother, you know, for no reason. I couldn't figure, why? You know?
Not only that, but in the States, I would never imagine that happening, that the dressing room would just be sitting there lacing up their boots.
Yes, that's what they did. And that's the honor God truth. That's the honor God truth. And then when I came
to fear, do you think, or they just legitimately didn't care?
I don't know. I'm not a man reader, but I just know that it just shocked me that guys would treat this like, you know, Jose popped a pimple on his back or something. You know, that's what they looked at like. So the next morning, I can say about 7 in the morning or something, I went and got some breakfast, and then I started heading back to the hotel. And they stopped me in the lobby. They said, Abdul is having a meeting. I went to the meeting. After the meeting, I went to the police station, and Sika, Raymond Rome's father, went with me. He said, I'll protect you, brother. Ain't nobody gonna mess with you. He said, if I was in that dressing room, they would have never got to Brody. So Sika walked me to the police station and brought me back. Then I started getting tired, so I want to go upstairs and go to bed. So then I pushed the elevator, and Sabio Vega came down, was on the elevator. He said, brother, I got your bag. He said, get out of here. They looking for you. I said, looking for me for what? He said, you talking. They looking for you. He said, go to the airport. And back then, you didn't have to make reservations. You just go and pay in cash.
It wasn't like now.
It ain't like now. You could pay in cash. So I think my ticket was something like $100 some. So I bought me a plane ticket, and I flew home. When I got home that evening, my phone kept ringing, so I answered. Carlos Colon, hey brother, you deserted us. I said, what do you mean you deserted us? I said, y'all stab a guy to death right in front of me, and then you send people up to my room to mess with me. Oh, there was nobody waiting on you. He said, who told you that? I said, no man who told me. I said, but I know you had people waiting on me. They were gonna off me up in that room. Then the cops covered it up.
There's murders in Puerto Rico all the time. For people that don't know this, crazy.
Yeah, and the cops the court, you can ask Dutch Mattel, both me and Dutch, we supposed to be there. They didn't say me, Dutch, or nobody, the information. I told them, I said, y'all don't even have to pay. I said, I paid for my own ticket. You know, ticket was cheap back then, you know. A round trip was like $300 for a round trip ticket. And then out of New York, probably about $250 for a round trip ticket. I was gonna just fly in, do my stuff, go back to the airport and fly back out. They never contacted me. That's the only reason I didn't testify. Not because I was afraid or didn't want to. I wanted to testify. That's why I'm telling my story now. This is the only way I could testify. I'm doing my testimony now. Every time somebody asked my brother, I testify. I couldn't testify that day for him, but I'm testifying for him now. And I think if the family, what they should do, they should do a wrongful death. Like they did OJ. They did it with OJ, but I don't do it with this guy. This guy shouldn't be walking around like this, the way he did it. Because that was just cold-blooded murder. He said, can I talk to you? The guy turned around, he started stabbing him. There was no altercation, no nothing. The man wanted me to draw, he was sitting there, the only thing he was thinking about me getting a artwork done of his son. That's why he came to me. Can you draw this picture of my boy? That's what he wanted. A picture of his boy. That's it. None of this was on his man.
And there was no internet at that time.
Nothing.
Yeah.
They rode together the night before.
Yeah, Brody and Gonzalez rode to the show the night before.
The night before.
Yeah.
Jose's supposed to pick him up the next day.
And they weren't even wrestling each other around that time, were they? They're both baby faces.
Yes.
So it's not like Brody.
Nothing. There was nothing between them. Nothing.
Yeah.
They wanted his money. They wanted him out because Brody, knowing Brody. Brody started going to their meeting making suggestions. And they was afraid of him. They just wanted him to put money in the business, but not have anything to do with it. Yeah.
So no FBI or no one from the States ever contacted you? So as far as you know, it was never investigated outside of Puerto Rico?
No, was all swept under the rug. It's a well-known story that nothing ever happened about, which is a crying shame. He got a son out here somewhere that grew up without a father, and he loved that boy to death. That's what broke my heart so much. That's the part that dig in deep. When I put him on the ambulance, he had that picture in his hand. When I took him off the ambulance, he had that picture in his hand. When I pushed him into the emergency room, he had that picture in his hand. The last thought I got of Brody, laying down, holding his intestines in with one hand and taking the other hand, holding on to a picture of his son. That's how this man left this world, holding his intestines and his son. That's how he left this world. For no reason. There was absolutely no reason to do that. Well, that's enough. I'm gonna get pissed off. I'm gonna get mad. I don't want to get mad.
I'll wrap this up just with a few more questions here. You ended up having a couple more runs in WWE. One was with Mark Henry.
Right.
What was your time like with Mark Henry?
I love Big Mark. Mark Henry, if it wasn't for Mark Henry, I would have never went back. If you ever notice, if you look at the tape of my WWE 2006 Hall of Fame introduction, Mark Henry looked like a big kid out there. He grew up watching me. He wanted me to take my shirt off and pose so much. You see Mark Henry, take it off, take it off. He was doing that, take it off. And so I think what happened, Vince saw that. And so Vince put two and two together and said, you know, it'd be good to put the strong man from the past with the strong man today. So we had a pretty decent run, me and Mark. And Mark took good care of me. He never lost contact with me. When I left the WWE, there were three of all the wrestlers that always kept in touch with me. Shelton Benjamin, Teddy Long, and Mark Henry. I can call Mark Henry right now, he answered the phone. He's the only wrestler, him and Teddy Long, but Teddy's not there no more. But Mark Henry, of all the wrestlers I know, he's the only wrestler that is still present with the WWE that I could call and they would pick up the phone.
Did you work out with him on the road?
Yeah, I did. Well, that was my job. A lot of people don't know. My job was to train Mark Henry. See, Mark Henry was a weightlifter. You know, Olympic weightlifter. And Vince wanted me to show him bodybuilding stuff to help him to get in shape, you know, to get more muscular looking. So Mark learned a lot so my job was really not as his manager, but I was his personal trainer.
Lastly, you appeared on WWE Legends House. How did you enjoy your time on that show?
That was one of the best time I ever spent in this business because I said at the beginning of Legend House, I say it now, that was the first opportunity that we had to really get to know each other. You know, you travel with guys for years, but you don't know them personally. You know, but when you live with a person, they do things that you didn't know they do. You see things you didn't see before. You know, how they gets up in the morning. Like when Piper gets up in the morning, grumpy every morning. I didn't know that. Piper could play any instrument. He could play piano, trumpet, guitar. He was a multi-task musician. I never knew that. I never knew Piper could play. Jimmy Hart and Hillbilly Jim are songwriters. I didn't know that. Hillbilly Jim is the most talented. And Jimmy Hart, if you tell Jimmy, I want you to write a song about this lamp. He's a very, very ingenious, I didn't know that about him. Pat Patterson, I hear rumors, I didn't know he was gay until I stayed in the house with him. The only guy that was very, very secretive was Howard Finkerton. I still don't know Howard. He still keep it close to the vest. But it gave me an opportunity to know them guys. I really got to know Hacksaw Jim Duggan, even though him and I had a little falling out. I got to know him. I never knew Hacksaw before. So it gave me an opportunity to get to know guys on a different lover than just the dressing room. Because we all put on a certain mystique, a certain act for the boys. We all got a certain act for the fans, a certain way to act around the boys. But then when we're at home with our wife and family, we become ourselves. So I got to see, God bless him, Ronnie Piper, the real Ronnie Piper before he passed. I got to see the real Hacksaw, the real Hillbilly Jim, the real Jimmy Hart. So that to me was, I was lucky to get to know them guys personally.
One guy that I heard you talk about, I think it was on a podcast, that I guess he became famous in WWE, but you were giving a speech at Ohio Valley Wrestling or somewhere with CM Punk.
Right.
He was rude or something. Could you explain that?
Well, what happened was I didn't know who CM Punk was because I didn't watch the program. So, what was his name? Robert Gibson partner.
Ricky Morton.
Ricky Morton. No, Robert is the brunette, right?
Yes.
Ricky the blonde.
Yeah.
Wait, it was Robert. Robert was working there then. He was working for the officer. He picked me up at the airport and I did a speech for the wrestlers. Then I was done. Then after the show, Robert Gibson came to me. He said, "Tony, I want you to go out there and straighten the boys out." He said, "Especially that one with the tape." Because Robert didn't like that. He said, "It looked like I got two broken arms." He said, "I don't like all that tape because CM Punk would put tape." Well, I didn't know that he was the ECW champion. So when he was setting up there, so the guys were going by talking to him, and he was just being nice. He wasn't doing nothing wrong. That was my screw up. So, but I thought he was one of the trainees.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know he was already in the business because I didn't watch the program. So anyway, I said, "Hey, you, why don't you shut the F up while I'm talking?" I said, if Vince wanted you to do the talking, you be down here talking. He sent me here to talk to you kids, so why don't you shut up and show some respect? He said, "You talking to me?" I said, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." He said, "Well," he said, "a lot of that stuff you're talking about ain't gonna work today." He said, "You got some good stuff, but it ain't gonna work totally." And I said, "What the hell you know about it? I sold out Madison Square Garden." I started talking to them. And I said, "I tell you what, if you think that what I did is so old-fashioned, why don't you come down here and I get in the ring with me? I kick your ass." I said, "Either come down here and get in the ring with me or shut the hell up." So he was quiet. So the next day, I was going to Florida because they were just starting the school in Florida, and Steve Kern was there. He come to me, he said, "Oh, Johnny want to talk to you." So Johnny called me and said, "Hey, I hear you had a little run-in with CM Punk." So I told him the same story I told you. He said, "Well, we're going to straighten him out. He can't treat one of our Hall of Famers like that." Then later on, I went to work with Mark Henry, and I saw what Punk was trying to tell me. So I went to CM Punk and apologized to him. I was wrong. He was trying to tell me, I'm talking this stuff from the 70s and from the 80s.
Right.
None of that gonna work today. I didn't know that the business have changed that much. And the guy that I called my mentor was John Morrison. We rode together. He would tell me stuff that got me caught up to what is going on today. And so I had to apologize to CM Punk for that. But CM Punk did me a hell of a favor, and you can broadcast this. If you want to get a Tony Atlas t-shirt, you go to Pro Wrestling Tees, and CM Punk did that for me.
So you have a Pro Wrestling Tees t-shirt page?
T-shirt.
So you searched Tony Atlas on there.
Tony Atlas at Pro Wrestling Tees. They got 4 or 5 t-shirts. Then CM Punk set that up for me because I was man enough to go up to him and apologize. I was wrong.
Yeah. But you really didn't know any better because
I didn't know nobody. And then I got to know CM Punk. I said, I'm glad that he didn't come there. He probably would have kicked my ass.
Well, you didn't see his performance in UFC.
Well, I think that he froze.
Yeah.
I know him very well. He's a good fighter. I seen him in Harley Race take on people in bars before. We could hardly race train him.
Okay.
So I know he could take care of himself. He froze on that one.
And
He tried to fight their way.
right.
He should have fought his way. He should have just took them to the street. Fight the way you know how to fight. He tried to do their stuff. See?
And for people that want to follow you, you have a Twitter.
Yeah, it's called the Real Atlas. The Real Atlas. And I also do portraits. Anybody want their portrait done? I do portrait art for people.
Yeah, we're going to put some of the portraits up on the screen. So how do they can contact you through Twitter about?
Yeah. You go to the Real Atlas.
And what else do you have? You have a book that people can buy through.
Yep. Yeah. You go to crowbarpress.com and then you could get my book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put all that up on the screen. And to close this off, is there any message you want to tell all your fans out there that have been watching this?
I was born in a small town called Clifton Forge, Virginia. Raised in even a smaller town called Lomo, Virginia. Got my break in pro wrestling in a town they call Richmond, Virginia. In the greatest country in the history of the world. I'm very blessed to be an American. I'm very blessed to be part of the wrestling world, and I'm very blessed that I still is able, with the grace of God, to come out and entertain the fans. I want to take this time to thank each and every fan out there for supporting Tony Atlas, and I hope to meet all y'all at some event sometime in the future. And God bless each and every one of y'all, and God bless the United States of America, the greatest country in the history of the world. I feel very, very privileged to be a part of this great nation. Thank you.